of 2001, something arrived in Delhi. Nobody saw it arrive in the traditional sense. There wasn't a flight number or luggage. It didn't report to immigration, although this barely distinguished it from several million other living things in the city. It simply began appearing at night. People said it was covered in black hair, that it had glowing red eyes, and could jump between rooftops. Its hands ended in metallic claws. Some witnesses said it wore a helmet. Others described 3 illuminated buttons on its chest. A few reports gave it a vulpine face, powerful muscles, and a height approaching 8 feet. And according to one of the more ambitious additions to the story, it occasionally wore roller skates. So the police of Delhi were left searching for either an undiscovered primate, a costumed criminal, a military robot, an extraterrestrial visitor, or maybe a local aspiring Bollywood actor. Whatever it was, people were injured. People died. Thousands stayed awake through the night, gathering on roofs with sticks and improvised weapons. Police received hundreds of reports. Neighborhood patrols formed. The government even offered a reward for information leading to the creature's capture. Then, almost as suddenly as it had arrived, the monkey man disappeared. It was never conclusively identified, and that's the case we're getting into today. This is the story of the Kala Bandar, better known outside India as the Monkey Man of Delhi. And I want to say this right at the beginning, that I don't think everyone who reported it saw the same thing. And that's different from saying nobody saw anything. I just think that once a story spreads through a city, it collects misunderstandings, opportunists, rumors, and frightened people trying to interpret noises they hear in the dark. Eventually, every shadow becomes a cryptid. But somewhere under all the chaos, I think there might have been an original encounter, something that started it. And in the summer of 2001, that something managed to frighten one of the largest cities in the world. I think to properly understand why the Monkey Man story became so powerful, you kind of have to imagine Delhi in May. The heat can remain oppressive well after sunset. At the time, a lot of working class families were sleeping outside or on rooftops because their homes were too hot. Power cuts made fans unreliable. Houses stood close together. Roofs, balconies, stairways, and narrow lanes formed an enormous connected landscape above and between the streets. If something could climb and jump, this was the perfect place for it. If nothing unusual was there, it was also a perfect place to imagine that something could be. People were exposed while they slept. The darkness was interrupted by power failures. Information moved through TV, newspapers, neighbors, and word of mouth. Cell phones existed, but the modern social media machine hadn't yet developed. Rumors traveled at more of a human speed, which was slower than Twitter, but carried the added authority of being delivered by your best friend's uncle. And uncles, as we know, are responsible for a significant percentage of paranormal intelligence gathered worldwide. The earliest reports are difficult to untangle. Retellings frequently collapse weeks of events into a single dramatic outbreak. Accounts circulated before the panic reached its peak in the middle of May, but the basic story remained similar. People were being attacked at night by something that looked partly human and partly simian. One victim might describe a small, dark creature. and others saw a large, muscular figure. Some said it scratched them, others said it struck, bit, or chased them. Witnesses reported that it could clear walls and leap between buildings with impossible speed. It appeared, attacked, and escaped before anyone could properly examine it. This is a common feature of anomalous encounters. The event gives the witness just enough time to understand that something is wrong, but never enough time to understand what the thing actually is. The encounter seems almost designed to produce testimony rather than evidence. The most famous description of the monkey man sounds less like an animal and more like something assembled from several completely incompatible realities. It stood approximately 4 feet tall. Its body was covered in thick black hair. It had bright red eyes. It wore something resembling a metal helmet. Its hands or claws appeared to be made of metal. 3 buttons or lights were visible on its chest. There are variations. In some reports, it was much larger. Some gave it an animal-like snout. Some described machinery attached to its body. Others saw a fairly ordinary monkey, except for the unusual size, intelligence, and aggression. The roller skates appear in later summaries and sensational versions of the story. I haven't found really enough reliable early testimony to treat them as an established feature. I just mention them because that detail has become inseparable from the legend. It's also kind of awesome. I think a hairy nocturnal cyborg was already difficult enough for the Delhi police. Giving it roller skates feels needlessly hostile. The mechanical features are the most fascinating parts of the description for me. People weren't just reporting a large monkey loose in the city. Delhi has real monkeys. Residents know what monkeys look like, and the relationship between humans and monkeys in Indian cities is long-standing, complicated, and occasionally does resemble a territorial dispute. The monkey man, though, was something else. The metal claws, helmet, lights, and well above ordinary jumping ability made it sound technological. Some people reportedly speculated that it was a machine or escaped military experiment. Others saw a man wearing armor or a special suit. And here's where this case enters the super weird category. Throughout modern encounter literature, witnesses sometimes describe entities that appear partly organic and partly mechanical. The dividing line between creature, vehicle, and operator becomes quite uncertain. A classic alien encounter usually gives us a being and a craft. Cases like the monkey man seem to combine them. The technology is worn, grown, or incorporated into the entity's body. The witness usually can't tell whether they're looking at an animal in armor, a robot designed to resemble an animal, or a living thing whose anatomy includes structures that we interpret as machinery. That doesn't prove the creature was technological. Darkness does turn ordinary objects into metal, glass, and illuminated surfaces. Fear is an enthusiastic but not super accurate costume designer. But I guess this brings me to the question, was it a monkey? What if the witnesses were attempting to describe something for which they had no stable category? As the reports multiplied, fear spread across eastern Delhi and into nearby cities. People began sleeping in groups. Men gathered with sticks, rods, and other weapons. Neighborhood patrols watched the rooftops. Any sudden movement could trigger a chase. Any cry could bring dozens of people into the street. Delhi police were flooded with calls. On one Thursday night alone, authorities reported they received approximately 80 monkey man calls. Most produced no creature and no physical evidence. A small number involved people with injuries they attributed to attacks. At the height of the panic, thousands of additional police personnel were reportedly deployed. Authorities created a special team and offered a reward of 50,000 rupees for information leading to the culprit's capture. Contemporary reporting described police investigating the possibility of disguised attackers, organized mischief, or criminals exploiting the panic. I think that escalation is important to notice. The police didn't officially conclude that an armored, supernatural monkey had established some kind of rooftop kingdom. They clearly suspected human involvement or public panic. Still, you don't deploy thousands of officers and offer a significant reward because 3 people heard an odd-sounding cat. Something was happening. The difficulty is defining what something actually means. Some victims displayed scratches, some reported bites, others had bruises from falls. Doctors looked at the injuries and police interviewed witnesses. Artists even produced sketches based on the descriptions. Yet the physical evidence never stabilized around a single attacker. There were no clear footprints demonstrating an unknown animal. There was no body or no costume recovered during the main wave. No suspect was caught committing the acts. The creature was everywhere in the city's imagination, and nowhere police could put handcuffs on it. This was especially inconvenient because handcuffs, as you probably know, are among the few technologies available that have been designed without a specific monkey man policy. But yeah, the funny details stop being funny here. People died during the panic. Contemporary reports vary regarding the exact number, but at least 2, and possibly 3, people were killed after falling from buildings or staircases while attempting to escape what they believed was an attack. Others suffered serious injuries. One pregnant woman reportedly fell down a staircase after neighbors cried out that the monkey man had arrived. A man sleeping on a rooftop reportedly jumped or fell while fleeing. Deaths were not caused by confirmed contact with the creature, but the fear surrounding it was absolutely real. Now, it's important to remember that a phenomenon doesn't need to possess claws to cause physical harm. Belief changes behavior, and behavior changes bodies. A rumor can move people through space, raise heart rates, redirect police resources, and cause someone standing near a roof's edge to take that one fatal step. The skeptical interpretation uses these deaths as evidence that the monkey man was a social panic, and I guess that's reasonable. It still doesn't tell us whether an actual encounter began the panic. Mass hysteria is often presented as a total explanation, as though identifying the social amplification makes the original stimulus disappear. Sometimes it does. Entire outbreaks can be created through expectation, suggestion, and misattribution. Sometimes a real event enters a frightened community and is multiplied. One attacker can become 20. One strange animal can become a cyborg. One explained injury can give every scratch in the city a new origin story. And maybe one genuine anomaly becomes impossible to investigate precisely because hundreds of false reports surround it. If you wanted to conceal a real monster, one of the most effective things you could do would be to make everyone else see it. The descriptions of the monkey man were widely inconsistent. This is the strongest point against a single physical creature. A 4-foot animal and an 8-foot humanoid are unlikely to be the same zoological specimen. A hairy monkey and a man in a helmet are not minor variations, and roller skates do not generally appear and disappear as an animal matures. The time, darkness, fear, and expectation could explain much of this. People experiencing a sudden threat don't observe events like cameras. Attention is narrowed and memory is usually reconstructed. details heard later can enter the remembered encounter. If a community expects glowing eyes, a reflection becomes glowing eyes. If the newspaper prints a sketch, later witnesses may unconsciously see the sketch. This is just basic psychology, but paranormal cases repeatedly present another possibility. What if the instability is part of the phenomenon? John Keel, who wrote extensively about Mothman and other anomalous encounters, argued that many apparent monsters, UFO occupants, sprites, and strange visitors might be expressions of a single underlying phenomenon. The intelligence behind them could adapt its appearance to the witness, the culture, or the expectations of the time. In that model, contradiction does not automatically disprove the phenomenon. Contradiction might just describe its behavior. A biological animal should maintain a relatively stable body. A psychological projection might vary between humans, between witnesses. A deliberately deceptive intelligence might vary because confusion is the objective. And sometimes something that exists only partially within our perceptual world might be reconstructed differently by every nervous system that encounters it. Imagine several people reaching into dark water and touching different parts of an unfamiliar animal. One finds smooth skin, and another touches something hard and concludes it's metal. Their testimony conflicts because none of them encountered the whole thing. One of the strangest details about the Delhi Monkey Man is the brevity of its reign. It did not gradually establish itself as a local species. There were no decades of consistent sightings before the outbreak. It arrived as a concentrated wave, dominated public attention, and then faded. This pattern resembles other paranormal flaps. UFO sightings sometimes occur in intense geographic clusters. Apparitions appear repeatedly in one place over several weeks. Strange animals are reported by multiple witnesses, generate enormous interest, and then disappear before researchers arrive. The phenomenon behaves less like a hidden population and much more like weekly weather. Conditions develop, something breaks through, people see it, and then the conditions change again. If the Monkey Man were a known species, we would need to explain where it lived, what it ate, how it reproduced, and why Delhi's enormous population never produced a body. If it were a temporary paranormal intrusion, those objections become less important. It may never have lived in Delhi in the ordinary sense. It may have occupied the city briefly. There's also the possibility that the first attacker was human. A criminal or group could have used a costume, claws, or maybe even climbing equipment. The subsequent panic then produced hundreds of unrelated sightings, but no convincing original attacker was identified. In 2002, 4 teenagers from the affluent Nizamuddin East area were reportedly caught using monkey costumes while stealing from vegetable vendors. This proves that people were willing to exploit the legend, but I don't think it proves they created it. Copycats follow famous crimes because the narrative already exists. Nobody argues that a later Elvis impersonator wrote Heartbreak Hotel. I don't know if you get my humor, but that was a joke. We could say there is a deeper culture layer here, and if we're going into it, it needs to be handled carefully. Monkeys are not foreign in Delhi. They occupy physical, religious, and symbolic space. They live near people, enter buildings, steal food, and occasionally attack. The association of monkeys with Hanuman gives them additional significance within Hindu culture, though the Delhi Monkey Man was generally treated as a threatening creature rather than some kind of divine manifestation. The familiarity may have supplied the basic form. When a strange presence moved across a roof, monkey was an available category. Add unusual speed, darkness, and terror, and the ordinary animal becomes something much larger. But symbols can work in two directions. Culture may shape an imaginary monster, but a genuine paranormal intelligence could also use forms that already carry meaning within the culture it enters. If something appeared in rural America, it might be described as a dogman, demon, or alien. In medieval Europe, it could become a devil or fairy. In a modern Indian megacity with real monkey conflicts, it becomes the monkey man. The form localizes the encounter. It becomes the Kala Bandar, or monkey man. The form localizes the encounter. Whatever stands behind it is still hidden. You could say the Delhi monkey man has an interesting predecessor in Victorian England. Beginning in the 19th century, witnesses reported a bizarre figure known as Spring-Heeled Jack. He was said to possess glowing eyes, claw-like hands, and the ability to make extraordinary leaps. Some accounts described a helmet, tight clothing, or an unusual technological appearance. He attacked or scared people and escaped by jumping over walls and buildings. The similarities are not exact, but I think they are striking. Both figures appeared primarily at night, attacked or approached people unexpectedly, possessed claw-like hands, displayed glowing eyes, incorporated strange clothing or metallic features, escaped through impossible jumps, generated intense media attention, and were never conclusively captured. The conventional explanation would be that Spring-Heeled Jack became a template for later urban legends. That is possible, although there's little reason to assume that the average monkey man witness in East Delhi had studied Victorian English folklore. The paranormal interpretation is more unsettling. Perhaps the same category of being returns under different names. The clothing, the city, the newspapers, they all change, but the basic performance remains. It suddenly appears and violates the boundaries of human movement. It injures or terrifies a small number of people. It allows the story to grow, and then it leaves. Now let's try to build the strongest skeptical explanation rather than a flimsy version that can be dismissed in 30 seconds. First, Delhi already had real monkeys. A frightened person waking in darkness could be scratched or bitten by a monkey, and later describe the animal as much larger or stranger than it was. Glowing eyes could result from reflected light. Metallic claws might be an interpretation formed after hearing other reports. Second, there may have been human attackers. Criminals, pranksters, or vigilantes could wear dark clothing and exploit the panic. A person carrying climbing equipment or metal implements could produce mechanical descriptions. Third, many injuries were probably self-inflicted during escape. People fell from roofs, ran into obstacles, or injured one another during crowds and chases. Scratches found afterward were attributed to the creature. Fourth, sensational reporting standardized the legend. Once newspapers and television described a shadowy, hairy attacker with metal claws and red eyes, people knew what they were expected to see. The story supplied a vocabulary for every unexplained nighttime event. Fifth, the outbreak shows classic features of collective panic. Fear spread through connected communities. Reports multiplied after publicity. The descriptions were inconsistent, and calls overwhelmed police. Physical evidence, though, remained scarce. The phenomenon faded when public attention and anxiety declined. I think that's a coherent explanation. It probably does account for a large percentage of reported encounters. I still feel uncomfortable using it to erase every witness. The phrase mass hysteria can become intellectually lazy. It names the social pattern without reconstructing each event. If 60 people report injuries, it's not enough to diagnose a city from a desk and declare that imagination completed all necessary physical labor. Which wounds were consistent with falls? Which resembled animal scratches? Which witnesses saw the creature before hearing detailed reports? Did any independent descriptions match? Were there geographic or temporal clusters? Did police preserve the original statements? How many reports were anonymous calls, and how many involved identifiable witnesses willing to be examined? Those questions are so important, but unfortunately the public legend has swallowed much of the case-level evidence. Modern summaries repeat the most colorful details, while original witness statements are so hard to locate in full. We're left with a citywide event and a very incomplete forensic record, which is precisely where monsters prefer to live. Now, I don't believe an 8-foot species of armored roller skating ape lived undetected in Delhi and then quietly relocated after being discovered. I also don't believe the entire case can be dismissed as several million people simultaneously forgetting what monkeys look like. My suspicion is that something real occurred at the beginning. It may have been a strange animal, or a human attacker using a disguise. Or it may have been a genuine, anomalous encounter involving a creature that didn't behave like an ordinary resident of our physical environment. Once the story entered the city, it multiplied. Real monkeys became monkey man. Burglars, nightmares, falling objects, and frightened neighbors all became monkey men. Some people lied, and some misidentified ordinary things. Some were injured by the panic itself. But hidden inside that enormous cloud of fear might have been a small number of encounters that remain genuinely unexplained. That possibility interests me more than choosing between every report was true and nothing happened. Reality is rarely considerate enough to arrange itself into two clean teams. There is a spiritual dimension to collective fear that does not require us to abandon reason. Human attention is powerful. When thousands of people focus on the same image, that image begins influencing the physical world through their behavior. It changes where people sleep, what they carry, how they interpret sounds, and how they treat strangers. In that limited sense, the monkey man became real regardless of its origin. But many traditions go further. They propose that sustained attention, emotion, and imagination can create or attract forms of intelligence. Western occultism calls some of these thought forms, or egregores. Other traditions describe beings that gather around fear, conflict, or intense human states. Now, I'm not claiming that Delhi imagined a monster into biological existence. I just wonder whether human consciousness can create conditions through which certain phenomena become easier to encounter. Maybe fear is not only a reaction. Maybe it's also an ingredient. A frightened city might become psychologically porous through the injection of fear. Dreams start entering waking life. Ordinary ambiguity becomes charged. Opportunistic people take advantage. Animals behave unpredictably. And if other forms of intelligence exist at the edges of perception, collective attention may provide them with an opening. The monkey man might have caused panic. The panic might have created the monkey man. I think the most disturbing possibility is that both statements are true. Something did appear, and people fed it with attention. The story gave it a body. Every new witness added another feature: claws, helmet, buttons, skates, red eyes. The creature became increasingly elaborate as the city attempted to understand it. Then public attention moved elsewhere. The opening closed, and Monkey Man disappeared. No Delhi police officer ever placed the Monkey Man under arrest. No zoologist received a body, and no clear photograph settled the case. There was no press conference at which a tired official unveiled a costumed criminal and explained that the glowing eyes were bicycle reflectors. There were only witnesses, wounds, contradictory descriptions, terrified neighborhoods, a police operation, and several people who died while trying to escape something that may not have existed. The safe conclusion is mass panic, but I always think that that's incomplete. Panic does explain how the story spread. It explains the false reports, mistaken identities, and injuries caused by flight, but it doesn't automatically reconstruct the first encounter. It doesn't prove that every wound was self-inflicted, and it doesn't tell us why particular features appeared or whether a real attacker moved beneath the growing legend. The Delhi Monkey Man occupies an uncomfortable space between creature and idea. It may have been an animal transformed by fear, a criminal protected by confusion, a temporary paranormal visitor, a technological-looking entity entering a city that had no category for it, or a thing produced through the interaction between an unexplained event and millions of human minds. Whatever it was, it understood one of the oldest rules of appearing in public: never stay long enough to be understood. For several weeks in 2001, Delhi looked toward its rooftops and saw red eyes looking back. Then the rooftops were empty. At least, that is what everyone eventually agreed to tell themselves. Thank you for listening to Idiot Mystic. If you remember the Monkey Man panic, especially if you lived in Delhi or the surrounding area in 2001, I would genuinely like to hear what people around you believed at the time. The polished internet version of a case is rarely the same as the story remembered by the people who were actually there. You can join the Idiot Mystic Discord through the link in the description, where we kind of talk all day. It's kind of scary. Or find me on Instagram and TikTok at Idiot Mystic. The next creature in this series will take us to a farmhouse in Kentucky, where a family spent an entire night shooting at small, glowing-eyed beings that seemed incapable of being killed. That will be the Hopkinsville Goblin Siege. And somehow, despite everything we've just discussed, it involves fewer roller skates.